All right, welcome back. This is lesson 3 of TandemFlow's AI development course. So right here, I'm in the GitHub repo for this lesson. It might look a little different just since it's been updated, but right here, you can just go in, grab this link, quickly clone it to a file in your computer or a folder. Right here, we have the fetch Wikipedia article, this function and this file that we wrote up in last lesson. So starting from exactly where we left off last lesson, we are going to get into how to better collaborate with Aider and how to actually use Aider as this like coding partner as opposed to just like this thing that writes code for you. So the way to do that is through planning. Now, planning is something, as you get deeper into this technology, planning is something that you should be focusing a ton on. Planning and implementation steps and things like that are going to be super important, and we're going to cover all of that and how to best do that throughout this course. But for right now, we're going to start with a very simple concept called the Scratchpad. So you can think of the Scratchpad and as this sort of workspace for you and Aider to work on together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just up here, hit create new file and just make a very simple Scratchpad.md. So this is a markdown file. Going to keep it completely empty. And this is going to be, like I said, a shared workspace for Aider and I to develop a plan for how to better improve this project. So what we're going to be working on here in lesson 3 is adding some data analysis to our Wikipedia fetcher. So just as a refresher, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this command here, Python 3, Wikipedia fetcher.py, and I'll give it that same Python programming prompt from earlier. So there we go. Got that article. Sweet. Everything is working as expected. Awesome. So now here we are with this empty Scratchpad file setup. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to boot up Aider. So I'm going to use Sonnet. Sonnet is a model developed by the company Anthropic. Claude 3.5 Sonnet is one of the better coding models out there right now. DeepSeek is having some trouble right now, so I'm going to start using Sonnet. You can use whoever you'd like for these simple tasks, but for right now, just know I'm using Sonnet, and that is why. So Control L, clear out my terminal here, and I'm going to use the /add to add the Scratchpad.md file to the chat. So we can see here, now Aider has access to this file, and we can start working on it together. So super handy. Now that I have Scratchpad open, I have Aider booted up, and Scratchpad in the chat, we can work on developing a plan for this project. So like I said, we're going to start doing some simple data analytics on these Wikipedia articles. So we have all this raw text, and I want to know some simple things about it, word frequencies, the most used words, stuff like that. And we can do that super easily with Aider. Even if this is not something you've done in Python before, this is something that we can do very easily with Aider, and I'm going to show you how. So let's go ahead and just describe the changes that I want to make to this code base. So again, just this single file that we're working on right now. So I'll go ahead, write up a quick prompt to describe to Aider what I'm planning on doing with this project. Okay, so here I've set up a very simple prompt, and this is just plain English, just like I would throw into ChatGPT or anything like that. And what I'm saying here is I want Aider to create a plan for adding data analysis to Wikipedia fetcher.py, the file that we've been working on. I would like a bar chart with the top 10 most used words and their counts and a word cloud. So these are 2 different kinds of charts that I'm asking for. These charts should be saved to new files. I would also like total word count, total unique words, and the average sentence length to be printed to the console. So pretty basic stuff here. And for right now, we don't have to worry too much about the actual prompting that's happening. We just need to worry about communicating what we want to see in our plan. So again, this isn't going to make any changes to our actual code. This is just setting up a plan for Aider and I to work on together. So I'm also going to add this plan to Scratchpad.md. So just add this plan to Scratchpad.md. It knows that we're using this file, and this is going to be sort of an active memory shared workspace for us. So I'll kick it off. We can see it's creating a plan here. outlining some steps. Awesome. So here we can see Scratchpad got updated with the plan. It looks like it is giving us some required libraries that we're going to need, which is great. Matplotlib, word cloud, and NLTK. Looks good. Text processing, clean the Wikipedia text, tokenize the words, remove common stop words, remove word frequency distribution, or create word frequency distribution. So you can scroll through and sort of read what Aider came up with just to understand where this code is headed. But for right now, just reading through this really quickly, I can see that this is doing pretty good. And it has these bar charts being saved as a PNG file, which is great, just an image. And the word cloud is also being saved as a PNG. The console output, print the total word count, unique words, and sentence length. That's awesome. That's exactly what I was asking for. And the code structure, we have some new functions here that it wants to add. Awesome. So it processes the Wikipedia text, perform the analysis, generate visualizations, display statistics. Sweet. Okay. All right. So now that we have this plan written up and we like the way that it's headed, we can go ahead and start developing a little further. So as you get further into working with Aider, working with LLMs, working with AI, it's really important to remember that these things can't read your mind. You have to be very, very careful about the way you communicate with them, the content that you give them, the context that you're giving them, all of that stuff. A good rule of thumb is, if you were given this prompt, this to-do list, and were asked to implement it, could you implement it given all of the context available to you? So like right now, this is a pretty good plan. However, I want to be a little more specific in how this is implemented. And of course, this is simple. It would probably get this on the first try, no problem. But I want to be a little more specific about, say, these new functions. I want to see exactly what these are going to look like before they actually get put into our code base, just to make sure they are all consistent and up to the standards that I'm looking for. So I will go ahead and clear out my Scratchpad here, and I will give Aider a new prompt. We want a little more detail in our plan here. So what I'm going to ask Aider to do is to break down each of the implementation steps just a little bit further. Right now, they're kind of general. They're not exactly the detail that I'm looking for. So break down each implementation step further. And the reason I'm using this pattern here with the double hash marks is because in the actual text here, you can see that this is exactly how this is written in the file. So when I give Aider the context of the Scratchpad and this specific tag, this implementation step title, it knows that I'm talking about this exact piece of text. Aider went ahead and, like I said, just expanded the implementation steps so that we have a little bit more detail of how we're actually going to write this into our project. So as I've mentioned, the Scratchpad is a shared workspace for you and Aider. This is so you and Aider and the LLM are on the same page of what is going to happen to your code base. So right here, right away, I can see that there are a ton new features here that it's looking to add. And this is super important because these models and Aider as a tool are much better programmers than 99.9% of people on the planet. So they are going to have these very ambitious goals of creating these super verbose, super complicated projects just because that's what they assume I'm looking for. So it can get pretty wordy and it can get pretty complicated very quickly. So it's important that you as the user, as the programmer, as the developer here are in charge the whole time, making sure that Aider doesn't sneak something by you and something you don't understand ends up in your code and then you have to go and fix it and do all the research. And it's easier to just spend your time up front here at the beginning, planning out everything as you need and save the time later. So right here, we have all these new steps and I'm just going to work through them and figure out exactly what I'm looking for. So I can open up Python programming here just to get a sense of the data that I'm working with. We can see here that, this is pretty standard text data. Nothing too complicated going on here. So back in Scratchpad, I can see it wants to remove HTML tags using Beautiful Soup. Now, this feature right here is a great example of Aider adding too much complexity to the problem. Now, I gave it a very simple prompt and it did its best with that. But right here, remove HTML tags using Beautiful Soup is going to add a whole nother function to our code. It's going to add this whole new dependency, Beautiful Soup, and we just don't need any of that. So I'm just going to remove that entirely from the Scratchpad. and everything else is looking pretty good to me. We have some tokenization that happens, some frequency distributions, some word count calculation, unique words, so on and so forth. So if there's anything in your Scratchpad or this Scratchpad that is confusing or that you don't quite understand, the nice thing about Aider and this Scratchpad system is that you can just remove that. If you don't understand it and Aider's going to get ahead of you, just remove it and Aider will figure out how to work around that. Or alternatively, if you want to learn, you can ask Aider using that /ask command for more information about any concept that it brought up. Because if it's confident enough to put it in the plan, there's a high likelihood that it understands it enough to describe it to you and how it would fit in your code base. So that all said, this plan is looking pretty good to me. We have everything that I was looking for in that original prompt. And so now I'm just going to take it a step further. So we have that high level implementation plan where our plan started here. So, these couple of steps here, these 4 steps of what we're actually putting in the code, and they're very high level. We broke those down into mid-level tasks, going a little bit more into specific things like how big the figure should be for matplotlib, or, how the frequency distribution should look. Things like this that are a little bit lower level than those high, lofty goals that we set at the beginning. Now, to really complete things, we take it a step further, and we are going to add simple code examples into this file. So I will go ahead here, and I'm back in my terminal. I'll clear it out with Control L and just hit clear so that we're working with a fresh context. Okay, so I've written another simple prompt here, and this one is getting a little bit more specific. So here I'm saying update code structure, and remember, I'm using these tags here to indicate that I'm talking about exactly this section of text here in the Scratchpad. So when I run this, Aider is going to know that this is exactly what I'm talking about. And the text in this section in specific is going to be important for the next part of the prompt. So the next part of the prompt, include code examples for each of the new functions. Sweet. So this is just taking it, like I said, to the lowest level, making sure that we have a full rounded out plan of how this is actually going to fit into our project. So I will go ahead and let Aider work on that. So as Aider is working away on that, I want to emphasize how important it is that you as the developer understand 100% of what's going on in the file. So right here, it wrote a bunch of code. And what's wonderful about Aider is that you can always, copy and paste this code into the terminal or even just reference it from this exact function name and ask it what it's doing. Ask it to break it down as much as you need, to teach it to you as much as you need. And that is really how this stuff is so powerful. So make sure that you are always in the driver's seat with your AI. You are always the one that is controlling the direction of the project. Don't let it get too ambitious or too big, and all of a sudden you have lost understanding of the project and, Aider is taking control. So don't let it get to that point. Okay, so Aider's finished up here. It's asking me if I want to pip install these couple packages. We can go ahead and see right up at the top that these are required libraries. So I will go ahead and just hit yes. I do want to pip install all of these. Wonderful. So that all worked just fine. I won't add that command output to the chat, and I'll just Control L to clear it out. Sweet. So let's go ahead and review the change that it made. So you can see here between all of the new functions, we have a little bit of code that goes along with it. So this is just exactly the code that is going to end up in our project, or at least very close to it. So this just helps Aider understand how to be more consistent, exactly what we're looking for, and we can read through all of these code sections and make sure that they actually work with what our vision for the project is. I'm going to go ahead and clear out the chat again. Now, what I can do with Aider is just give it a prompt to implement each of the steps within this Scratchpad. We can go ahead and use the read-only command to add Scratchpad to the chat. Wonderful. And obviously we are going to be editing the Wikipedia fetcher.py, so I can go ahead and add that to the chat as well. So this is quite a substantial prompt. This is, around 200 lines, and I'm basically just going to feed the entire thing to Aider. Now, Aider will miss things. AI misses things. LLMs miss things. It's just how it goes. So what I'm going to do is copy and paste this exact plan and just describe to Aider that I want this exact plan, this exact file to be implemented within wikipediafetcher.py. So pretty simple prompt, but keep in mind that it has all of this context that it's working with now. So it knows that this is the plan. This is what we're trying to do. I can go ahead, enter that prompt, and we'll see what it comes up with here. Aider has gone ahead and made those changes based on our Scratchpad to our wikipediafetcher.py file, which is great. So we can go ahead and run this file using our Python command, specify the article. I will use the Python programming language, and we can go ahead and run this. Awesome. So we can see here everything that we mentioned in our Scratchpad, the bar chart with the 10 most frequent words. That's great. The word cloud showing us word frequencies, how often they are used. That looks great. These are both saved as PNGs as we specified. We also have these analytics down here in the command line. So we have the total words, the unique words, and the average sentence length, as well as the 10 most frequent words. Hopefully you can see how powerful the Scratchpad tool is for Aider. Having this shared workspace between you and the agent is super helpful for making sure that you have consistent, clean code that you understand, having this plan for your project that you can be the controller of. The biggest thing to take away from this is that most of your time should be spent on planning. We spent a couple minutes planning out this Scratchpad, and it saved us a significant amount of time from handwriting all of that code. However, we still understand that code as if we just wrote it. It's really, really a powerful tool. We're going to touch more on this and similar concepts in future lessons. Go try this with a new project or with our current project. See what you're able to come up with at that Scratchpad. Remember, you can always use that /ask command if you don't understand something, and the /help command as well.